The last broadcast from Earth. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. 1,000 delegates from across the known universe sat in stunned disbelief. The transmission was ancient, thousands of years old, but its signal was too strong, too deliberate. The engineers had verified it. The message was not just old, it was alive. It had overridden security networks thought to be impenetrable. The source, a dead planet that had long since been erased from all star maps. A world once called Earth. High Chancellor Vrax of the Supreme Dominion leaned forward in his seat, his reptilian eyes narrowing at the flickering screen before him. He had heard the stories, the whispers of a species that had defied all odds, that had fought to the last breath against an empire far superior to their own. But those were just myths, cautionary tales told by aging war veterans. Earth had been wiped clean. That was the truth, wasn't it? The signal crackled, and then a voice echoed through the chamber. If you are hearing this, it is already too late. The voice was cold, emotionless. It did not carry fear or anger. It did not threaten. It simply spoke, factual, direct, absolute. A shiver ran through the chamber. Vrax clenched his claws. Something about the voice unsettled him in a way that no enemy ever had. It was not a plea, nor a desperate warning from a defeated race. It was something worse. It was certainty. The voice continued. You think you've won. You think we are gone. But you don't understand what you've done. A sharp beeping noise echoed through the chamber. The engineers scrambled to stabilize the transmission. But something was wrong. The message, it wasn't just playing. It was reacting to them. Vrax's advisors exchanged uneasy glances. This must be a trick, muttered one, a tall creature with glowing blue eyes. The humans are extinct. Another, a cybernetically enhanced elder, shook his head. The signal is real, and it is powerful. Vrax inhaled slowly, traced the source. The engineers worked quickly, their fingers tapping against holographic interfaces. But as they traced the origin of the signal, their faces paled. One of them turned toward Vrax, his voice trembling. High Chancellor, the signal is coming from Earth. The chamber fell into an eerie silence. Vrax felt his cold-blooded heart pound against his chest. That was impossible. Earth had been glassed centuries ago. No life remained. The radiation alone should have rendered it uninhabitable for millennia. Another officer hesitated before speaking. Sir, the signal is not just a recording. It has been repeating every 100 years. Vrax's throat tightened. Repeating. The officer swallowed hard. Yes, High Chancellor. But each time, it grows stronger. The chamber grew colder. Vrax's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. If the signal had been strengthening over centuries, then something on Earth was still active, something they had never accounted for. A younger officer, his scales shimmering with inexperience, whispered, Sir, what if the humans left something behind? No one dared to answer. Finally, Vrax turned toward his war generals. His voice was steady, but his mind was racing. Prepare a scout fleet. Send them to Earth. I want answers. The officers hesitated, but then nodded. As they rushed to follow his command, the flickering screen crackled one last time. The message had ended, but the system displayed a final warning. You should have left us alone. Then the chamber plunged into darkness. Every screen, every system in the Galactic Council's core shut down at once. Something had been waiting for them. And now, they had woken it up. The descent into darkness. The scout fleet moved through the vast void of space, their engines humming softly as they neared the long-forgotten planet. Commander Gaylor, a seasoned warrior of the Zarin Dominion, sat in his command chair aboard the lead warship. His reptilian eyes narrowed at the dead world ahead. Earth. No lights. No movement. Just a desolate husk floating in the darkness. Scan the surface, he ordered. His second-in-command, an insectoid officer named Vac, tapped at the controls. The screen flickered, struggling to process the data. Sir, "This is strange," Vax said, his mandibles clicking nervously. Gaylor frowned. "What do you mean?" Vax hesitated. "There's nothing. No radiation. No ruins. No life. The planet is smooth." Gaylor's stomach twisted. That wasn't right. The last recorded images of Earth had shown a shattered wasteland, a world left in ruin. But now, it was pristine. The ship's main screen flickered. A single word appeared in glowing red letters. "Leave." Gaylor's blood ran cold. "Who sent that?" he barked. Vax's claws trembled. "No idea, Commander. There are no signals. No active systems. It just appeared." Before Gaylor could respond, the alarms blared. The fleet's lead scout vessel, hovering just above the planet's surface, began to shake violently. "Sir, the Door ship is losing power," a crew member shouted. Gaylor's eyes widened as he watched the ship's energy readings drop to zero in an instant. It didn't explode. It didn't crash. It simply vanished. Gasps filled the bridge. One moment, the ship was there. The next, it was gone. Vax's voice trembled. "That's impossible." Gaylor gritted his teeth. "Get us out of here. Now." The moment he said those words, every screen on his ship went black. Then, a deep mechanical voice filled the bridge. Cold. Emotionless. "You were warned." The crew froze. And then, Earth moved. The ground below split open, revealing something massive buried beneath the surface. Something that had been waiting. As the fleet scrambled to escape, the void of space reached for them. And the last thing Gaylor saw before his ship was swallowed by darkness was Earth waking up. The awakening beneath the surface. Gaylor's warship plunged into darkness. The gravitational force that had seized them was not natural. It was not a planetary pull, nor the consequence of any known celestial body. It was deliberate, a force both ancient and intelligent, dragging them toward the surface of a world that should have been nothing but a graveyard. Alarms blared across the bridge. The emergency lights flickered, casting eerie crimson shadows over the panicked crew. Thrusters at maximum. "Break free." Gaylor roared, gripping the edges of his command chair so tightly his claws left deep grooves in the metal. Vax's mandibles clicked rapidly as he attempted to override the controls. "Sir, the engines are at full power, but we're not moving." His antennae twitched in distress. "It's like we're being held in place." Gaylor's eyes narrowed. That was impossible. Space did not simply hold onto ships. Gravity could be resisted. Tractor beams could be disrupted. But this was something else. The viewport cleared just enough for Gaylor to see what lay below. The planet's surface had changed. Where there should have been nothing but rock and dust, there were structures, towers of obsidian, their forms jagged and unnatural, as if they had erupted from the ground like broken shards of glass. Symbols carved into their surface pulsed with a deep red glow, like embers in the heart of a dying star. And then he saw them. They were rising. The ground cracked open in a jagged, nightmarish grin, revealing vast monolithic machines buried beneath the crust. Metallic limbs, miles wide, stretched outward, shaking off the weight of centuries. The war-torn Earth they thought they had left to rot was not only alive, it was awakening. Vax's voice trembled. "Sir, these readings, they're human." Gaylor snapped his head toward him. "What?" Vax's claws hovered over his console, his movements hesitant. "The energy signatures. They're pre-war human technology. But these readings make no sense. It's like they've evolved beyond what we knew." His voice dropped to a whisper. "This is not the same Earth we destroyed." Gaylor turned back to the viewport, his throat tightening. "Then what is it?" And then, the voice returned. It came from everywhere and nowhere all at once, vibrating through their very bones. "You took everything from us." Gaylor's scales bristled. "But we remain." Every console in the ship flashed red. And then, the fleet began to disappear. One by one, the scout ships that had arrived alongside them vanished, their presence erased as if they had never been there at all. There were no explosions, no distress calls, no wreckage. They were simply gone. Panic erupted on the bridge. "Sir, we're losing ships." Then the ship lurched violently, and for a brief moment, Geller felt a horrifying sensation, like something massive had wrapped around them, pressing against the hull. Vac let out a choked sound. Something is inside the ship. Geller's breath caught. The screens flickered, and suddenly they were not on the bridge anymore. The ghosts of humanity. The viewport had vanished. The alarms had stopped. The ship's cold metal walls had been replaced with glass towers and neon-lit streets. Gaylor stumbled backward, eyes wide as he took in the impossible sight. It was a city. Not just any city, a human metropolis. The buildings stretched high into a sky filled with artificial lights. Holographic billboards displayed images of smiling human faces, news reports flashing across massive screens in an alien language long since extinct. But it was wrong. There were no people. The streets were empty. The screens played memories, as if someone had frozen the last moments of human civilization and left them to loop for eternity. A screen flickered to life before him. It showed a family, a mother, a father, and a child. They were sitting at a dinner table, laughing. Then it glitched. The same image replayed, and replayed, and replayed. The child's laughter became distorted, stretching into an unnatural, warped echo that filled the empty city. Vac stepped closer, his claws trembling. "Sir, this isn't real." Gaylor exhaled shakily. "No, it's not. This was a message, a memory, a monument to a species that had once ruled this world. And then, it changed. The sky darkened, the buildings cracked, and the holograms turned static. The human faces disappeared. In their place, a single word burned itself into the air. Regret. The city collapsed around them. The illusion shattered, and suddenly, they were back on the ship. The alarms screamed. The emergency lights flickered. The crew was exactly where they had been moments before, except now, they were not alone. Standing in the center of the bridge, where nothing had stood before, was a figure. It was human. Or it had been. The form was flickering, its edges distorted, as if it were caught between existence and oblivion. Its face was hollow, its eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. It looked at Gaylor. And then it spoke. "You took our future." The lights cut out. "Now we take yours." The wrath of the forgotten. The warship shuddered violently. The force holding them in place intensified. Outside, the monolithic structures on Earth's surface continued to rise. They were not buildings. They were weapons. Planetary-scale constructs that had been buried for centuries, waiting for this moment. Vac's claws trembled. "Sir, the energy readings, they're spiking. If this continues, we'll..." The ship tilted sharply, and the crew screamed as the gravity stabilizers failed. Gaylor grabbed onto the nearest console. His mind was racing. This wasn't just a transmission. It wasn't just a warning. It was an execution. The last remnants of humanity had not been destroyed. They had been waiting. And now, after centuries of silence, they were awake. The screens flashed one final message: run. And then, the war began. The war that never ended. A desperate escape. The warship trembled violently, its hull groaning under the unseen force that held it in place. The lights flickered, casting eerie red shadows over the panic-stricken crew. Alarms blared in overlapping chaos as every system on board failed one by one. Gaylor dug his claws into the armrest of his command chair, his reptilian eyes darting between the failing controls and the impossible figure standing at the center of the bridge. It was human, or at least, it once had been. A flickering apparition wrapped in static. Its form glowed with a pulsing red light. It wasn't solid, but it wasn't a mere illusion either. It was something in between, shifting, stretching, as if it existed in multiple realities at once. And it spoke again. You destroyed everything. And now, there is nothing left for you. Gaylor swallowed, his mind racing. This thing, this entity, wasn't alive, not in the way he understood life. But it wasn't dead either. It remembered. It remembered the war, the slaughter, the genocide of an entire species. And now, it was speaking for the dead. Sir, we're losing systems. Vak's voice was nearly drowned out by the blaring alarms. His mandibles clicked in rapid distress as he fought to regain control of the ship. Shields are down. Propulsion is offline. Energy reserves air. The ship lurched, cutting Vak off. Gaylor clenched his jaw. They had to get out. Whatever this was, whoever was left behind, had spent centuries preparing for this moment. And they were not going to let anyone leave. The flickering human shape lifted its head. It stared directly at Gaylor. No one escapes. Then, everything changed. The burning of the sky. Outside, Earth was awakening. The ground split apart, revealing towering machines, their massive frames humming with power as golden lightning arced between them. These were not ruins. These were weapons, and they had been waiting. The warship's failing sensors caught a sudden spike in energy readings, a pulse so powerful it threatened to tear apart every ship still in orbit. One by one, the remaining vessels of the scout fleet vanished, not destroyed, not consumed, but erased from reality. Gaylor's heart pounded. Now, he roared, fire everything we have. His officers obeyed without hesitation. The warship's remaining turrets roared to life, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire directly at the surface of Earth. For a fraction of a second, Gaylor allowed himself hope. Maybe, just maybe, raw firepower could end this nightmare. But nothing happened. The moment the plasma beams struck the planet, they froze in midair. They did not explode. They did not burn. They simply stopped moving, as if time itself had rejected them. Then, without warning, the frozen plasma reversed direction, hurling back toward the ship at terrifying speed. Evasive maneuvers, Gaylor shouted. But it was too late. The first impact ripped through the ship's hull, sending crew members flying. The second strike shattered the primary engines, sending sparks and fire cascading through the bridge. Gaylor gritted his teeth as gravity twisted around them, pulling them closer and closer to the surface. This was no longer a battle. It was an execution. The Ghost Fleet. The ship plummeted through the thick atmosphere, the artificial gravity failing as sparks erupted from every console. The planet below was no longer Earth. At least, not the Earth Gaylor had seen in pre-war records. This was something new, something reborn. The skeletal remains of long-destroyed human cities had been reforged into massive monuments of war, their towering spires humming with an energy beyond anything the Galactic Dominion had ever encountered. And then, he saw them. Rising from the shadows of the surface, vast warships emerged from beneath the ground. These were not alien ships. They were human ships. Or, at least, they had once been. Gaylor's eyes widened. It was a fleet, but it was not alive. Their hulls were blackened, their engines cold, yet they moved with terrifying precision, silent relics of a long-dead war, piloted by something that refused to die. And then he understood. The humans had never stopped fighting. Their ships had been buried beneath the ruins of their world, waiting for the day they would rise again. And that day was today. The last stand. Gaylor's ship crashed. The impact sent a violent shockwave through the ruined city, tearing apart debris and sending dust and shattered steel into the air. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a voice returned. Now you understand. Gaylor struggled to his feet, his claws sinking into the broken metal of the bridge. Smoke filled the air. His crew lay unconscious, or worse. Through the shattered viewport, he saw them approaching. Not machines. Not drones. Humans. Or at least, what was left of them. They emerged from the shadows, figures wrapped in ancient armor, their visors glowing a deep, vengeful red. They carried weapons that should have been antique, yet hummed with an energy that defied time itself. They were not alive. But they were not dead. They had become something beyond both. And they had only one purpose: to finish what was started. Gaylor reached for his weapon. It didn't matter if this was a dream, a nightmare, or a punishment from the gods. If this was the end, then he would face it standing. The human soldiers stopped a few meters away. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one of them lowered his rifle. Gaylor's breath hitched, and the figure spoke. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was a declaration. Welcome to the war that never ended. The war that never ended. The stand before the forgotten. Gaylor stood frozen. His heart pounded against his ribs, his breath ragged as he stared at the impossible figures standing before him. They were human, or at least they had been. Their armor was ancient, battle-worn, scared with memories of a war long lost. Their visors glowed a deep crimson red, pulsing like the embers of a fire that refused to die. They held weapons that should have rusted to dust centuries ago, yet they hummed with energy. An energy that did not belong to the Galactic Dominion, nor to any known race. These were not ghosts. These were not survivors. These were soldiers without time, and they had never stopped fighting. The one at the front, a towering figure in a blackened exosuit, tilted his head slightly, as if studying Gaylor. And then, he spoke. "You don't belong here." The words were not a threat. They were a statement, a truth that Gaylor was only now beginning to grasp. The Dominion had believed Earth was dead. They had believed humanity was extinct. But standing here, in the ruins of a world that should have been lifeless, he realized something far more terrifying. Humanity had never left. The silence of the lost. Smoke coiled through the shattered remains of the warship. The wind howled through the ruins of the long-dead city, carrying with it the whispers of the past. Gaylor's claws tightened around the grip of his sidearm. He knew it was useless, but instinct demanded he not be defenseless. The human soldier, if that was even what he still was, took a slow step forward. The others behind him remained still, unmoving as statues. A war that had ended centuries ago was still alive here, frozen in time, playing on a loop that no one could stop. Gaylor's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "Who are you?" The human regarded him for a moment, and then he lifted his weapon and pointed it at Gaylor's chest. "We are the war you tried to forget." The word sent a chill through his bones. Gaylor's mind raced. This wasn't possible. No species, no civilization, no empire could last in this state for so long. But these weren't just men. They weren't just survivors. They were remnants. They were the echoes of vengeance itself. And they were not alone. The dead rise again. The ground trembled. Gaylor's breath hitched. It wasn't an earthquake. It was something worse. In the distance, the monolithic black towers that had erupted from the planet's surface began to pulse, waves of energy cascading between them in jagged, lightning-like arcs. Something beneath the surface was awakening. Something ancient. Something that should have never been left behind. The human soldier's radio crackled to life, his helmet turning slightly toward the sky. A deep mechanical voice, impossibly old, impossibly strong, whispered through the static. "Phase 2. Activate." The human soldier lowered his weapon. And then he turned away, as if Gaylor and his crew did not matter, as if they were already forgotten. "Run." The soldier's voice was calm, final. Gaylor blinked. What? The ground split open. A massive warship, black as night, rose from beneath the surface, its form ancient yet terrifyingly advanced. It was a relic from a time before the Dominion, before even the Council of Races. A warship built by humanity. A warship that had waited centuries, waited for this moment. Galer's ship had been reduced to wreckage. But it wasn't him they were targeting. The sky burned. Galer turned his gaze upwards just in time to see the Galactic Dominion's fleet arriving. They had sent reinforcements, but they were too late. The forgotten army of Earth had already awakened, and now they were going to finish the war. The fall of the Dominion. The human warship moved with a grace that defied its size. It should have been impossible. Galer had seen how the Dominion fought. He had seen how they had crushed Earth all those centuries ago. But these ships, they were something else entirely. The Dominion fleet descended in force, their capital ships unleashing a barrage of energy weapons toward the surface. Galer clenched his jaw. It wouldn't work. Nothing would. The warship in the sky absorbed the blasts as if they were nothing. Then it returned fire, and the entire front line of the Dominion's fleet vanished in an instant. There was no explosion, no wreckage. They simply ceased to exist. A weapon of pure annihilation, a weapon of vengeance, a weapon that should have never been left behind. Galer's claws dug into the shattered steel of his broken bridge. He had made a terrible mistake, and now the entire Dominion would pay for it. The truth that could not be denied. Vac coughed behind him, blood dripping from his mandibles. He was alive, barely. Galer knelt beside him. Vac's eyes fluttered open, and the terror in them was absolute. "Sir, we have to leave." Galer looked around them. There was nowhere to go. The ground burned. The sky collapsed. The Dominion's mightiest ships were being ripped apart like paper, and the ancient war machines of Earth had only just begun. Galer's breath came shallow and ragged. He had fought in 100 battles. He had conquered dozens of worlds. But this was not war. This was something else. Something worse. This was vengeance made manifest. The human soldier turned to him one last time. Behind the flickering red of his visor, there was something cold. Something final. Something that did not care whether Galer lived or died. Because to them, it didn't matter anymore. This war had ended centuries ago, and yet, it had never truly stopped. "You should have left us alone." The words sent a chill through Galer's very soul. And then, the world went white.